Good evening and welcome to the last installment of the Hagen History Center Spring 2021 Speaker Series. I'm Jeff Sherry, Museum Educator. Our speaker tonight is Emily Butler, Executive Director, Presque Isle Lightstation. Their talk is titled, The History of Lighthouses in Erie. Before I turn it over to Emily, just a few announcements from the Hagen History Center. We are currently closed to the public due to the pandemic, but we are working to complete exhibits in our new exhibit building, as well as those in the Watson Curtsey Mansion and the Wood Morrison House on our West 6th Street campus. We plan to open in mid-July of this year. Our staff has created many blogs and videos that are available on our website at www.eriehistory.org, and we encourage you to check those out regularly. Until recently accepting the role of Executive Director at the Presque Isle Lightstation, Emily Butler has spent her career in preservation in Frank Lloyd Wright. After receiving the bachelor's degree in anthropology from Temple University, she took a management role at Kentuck Knob, a small Usonian-designed Wright house in Chalk Hill, Pennsylvania. After realizing historic preservation was her passion, she moved to New Orleans and earned a master's in preservation studies from Tulane University. Most recently, she was the director of preservation at Taliesin West, Wright's winter camp and studio, and recently designed UNESCO World Heritage Site. Born in Pittsburgh, Emily is no stranger to the Erie Presque Isle area and is excited to return to the region and work to promote and preserve Erie's cultural and built heritage. Emily?
Well, thank you, Jeff. I'm very happy to be here today to talk to you all about a little bit of the history of the lighthouses here in Erie. We're going to be discussing the history of all three, just kind of briefly, talking about why lighthouses are so important in Erie and on the Great Lakes in particular. And we're also going to be looking towards the future a bit too, and talking about what we're doing with the lighthouses now and where we see them going into the future as we think about preservation and programming for all of the lighthouses. So when I first took this job, I was telling all of my friends and family, colleagues that I was going to be moving back to Pennsylvania to take a job managing lighthouses. And they all just kind of looked at me, stared for a second, presumably thinking that I had lost my mind, because how could there be lighthouses in Pennsylvania, right? It's a landlocked state. I think that a lot of people don't realize just how large the Great Lakes are, how important they are, and were for the development of our nation as the main thoroughfares for goods and people alike before widespread railways, superhighways, waterways were really how goods were transferred from the East Coast inland and vice versa. So these Great Lakes and their strategically beneficial harbors and tributaries were a driving force in the development of today's major cities: Chicago, Milwaukee, Buffalo, Cleveland, and Erie, just to name a couple. So because of all this shipping and industry, lighthouses began popping up all along the Great Lakes. Today, there are over 380 lighthouses along the Great Lakes in total, 3 of which are in Pennsylvania. So Lake Erie also presents some sort of unique challenges and necessitates lighthouses specifically. So Lake Erie, being the shallowest of all of the Great Lakes, is particularly susceptible to violent and sudden turns in weather patterns that can cause large waves and turbulent and dangerous waters for traveling ships. Erie is also elongated on the northeast-southwest axis, which is matched typically by prevailing wind direction. So these prevailing winds, combined with how shallow the lake is, it has caused many ships to run aground, capsize, sink. These sort of sudden oncoming storms can be very dangerous to boats. Kind of narrowing in more where we are, there is something called the Lake Erie quadrangle. And that part of that quadrangle does actually run between Long Point, Canada and Presque Isle here. And that is actually known to be one of the more dangerous sections of waterway on Lake Erie, particularly treacherous, and many ghosts, or many ships are now considered ghost ships. We actually have this really great map in our gift shop at the Presque Isle Lighthouse, kind of outlining how many ships have run aground. And it's pretty amazing how many have done so right outside of Presque Isle. So Presque Isle, of course, has another unique challenge for watercraft to navigate, and that is, of course, that it is a peninsula that extends out quite far into Lake Erie, which again, in stormy, foggy weather, would be difficult to see and again, cause ships to actually run aground into it. So these turbulent waters cause cargo haulers to regularly use the sheltered harbor at Erie as their base for shipping. At this point in time, salt was a major commodity. We're talking about the early 1800s right now. And it was a major commodity that was moved throughout the city. So local men in the shipping business in Erie, in particular Daniel Dobbins, actively lobbied Congress for the construction of a lighthouse at the harbor entrance. So this lighthouse would create a safer, more inviting entrance into the harbor, thereby expanding the port city and benefiting his business ventures in particular. Lighthouses were common on the East Coast at this point in time, but had not yet been implemented in mass or really at all on the Great Lakes as they are today. Another barrier to entry into the harbor here in Erie was that there were lots of sandbars, lots of sand deposits right in where ships would enter into the harbor when in lower water levels prevented large cargo haulers from entering and forcing them to unload onto smaller ships prior to actually being able to move into the area. So this was costly and inefficient. So Dobbins and his fellow advocates were very persistent. They continued to lobby Congress, and Congress finally authorized the construction of a lighthouse. So in 1818, what is now known as the Erie Land Lighthouse was put into service. It is the first lighthouse on the Great Lakes to be put into service. I think not technically the first one constructed. There's one in Buffalo that was constructed just prior to it. They were authorized by Congress at the same time, but ours was the first one to be put into service. Kind of continuing along that story, and why my Field of Dreams reference up there includes "and remove a little sand," was that in 1823, Congress also authorized the removal of those sand deposits, a project that was completed in 1827, included removing the sand deposits, which established a uniform depth at the entrance of the harbor, making it much more accessible to large cargo haulers. So the image that we're actually looking at in this slide, these two historic images, which both are from about the 1870s, they're not of the original 1818 lighthouse. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. Unfortunately, I don't have any photos that early of that lighthouse. If anyone knows of any, please reach out to me. I'd love to see them. But the existing version of the lighthouse is actually what we're seeing here today, this 1870 photograph. This is what the lighthouse looks pretty much like if you were to come up and visit this afternoon. So we're going to talk more about this in just a second. Also, just as a little side note, I love this image to the left. I am fortunate enough to actually live in this little cottage right here, the Land Lighthouse, and this whole embankment is completely covered in trees. So it looks quite different today than it did in 1870. So we're going to dive deeper into the history of each lighthouse, but what I hope that this timeline gives to everyone is a little bit of context into what was happening in the world while these lighthouses were being built. History is fascinating to me. I love to put construction of architecture in context to other things that are happening. So really, this is from 1818 to, I think we end here in 1975, a lot was happening in the United States. The war, the Civil War began in 1861. The Industrial Revolution began as well. So we see here in 1825, the internal combustion engine was patented. And then in 1878, the Edison Electric Company begins its operation. So it's kind of fun just to look at those different markers. And each of these things actually plays a role into the shipping and industry that was on Lake Erie and the development and expansion of the lighthouses. In particular, we're looking at 1878. Edison Electric Company is only beginning operation. So all of these lighthouses previously were not electrified. The lights in them were probably a beautiful Fresnel lens, and that lens would have been lit using an oil lamp that a lightkeeper would have had to go up every night, multiple times a night, and make sure that is lit. So what we're looking at here, the first one I want to talk about is the Erie Land Lighthouse. And first off, this is a beautiful works progress administration drawing, really outlining just how stunningly beautiful this lighthouse is. You can see here the stairway detail. It's absolutely gorgeous. They're cast iron perforated decorative spiral staircases, and they're really, really very beautiful. So the Erie Land Lighthouse shown here, or the original Presque Isle Light, was built in 1818. The light was positioned on a cliff overlooking the entrance to the bay, which is now the foot of Lighthouse Street in Erie. The original structure was a 20-foot high square wooden tower with an enclosed lantern room. The lamp that would light the way for ships was a 9-lamp array that was fueled by whale oil. Whale oil was very commonly used at this point in time. Eventually, it was transferred over to kerosene. So the position of the lighthouse on the cliff was beneficial at first, as it could project the light from this array 10 miles out into the lake. But soon, this, at first, strategic position proved to be quite the issue. So the lighthouse was built on very soft, sandy soil with a simple and insufficient foundation. Over time, the lighthouse started to lean pretty significantly. Metal bands were placed around the light in an attempt to stabilize it, but these efforts were unsuccessful, to say the least. And it was pretty clear that the tower needed to be replaced. So in 1857, a new tower was constructed with a slightly better but not great foundation. The new tower was 56 feet high, round, constructed of Cream City bricks. These Cream City bricks would have come from Milwaukee. And it did have that spiral cast iron staircase in the center that you would walk up to go to the lantern room, which was 16 feet. So they still really had not solved the foundation and site issues. The soft ground continued to be a problem. The foundation that they thought they had built sufficiently was not enough. So after 10 years, in 1867, they began to construct the current lighthouse, which is the one you see in this image right here. And if you were to come up to Lighthouse Street today, that is the same one that you would experience. So the current lighthouse was constructed 200 feet east of the original site. Finally learning their lesson, they dug a 20-foot foundation, inserted oak timbers, crushed limestone, and Portland cement to support the round brick tower with beautiful Berea sandstone exterior. They did decide to go with the sandstone exterior, aside from the brick, also thinking that that would help with the structural integrity of the tower itself. A third order Fresnel lens was installed that had a focal point of 128 feet above the lake and can be seen 15 miles away. So Changes in geography of Presque Isle, some bureaucratic misadventures, and the construction of the new Presque Isle Light rendered this somewhat obsolete, and it was taken out of commission in 1899. This currently is the only one of the 3 lighthouses in Erie that is no longer an active aid to navigation. So the lighthouse we're looking at here is the North Pier Lighthouse. So if we go back to our discussion on geography, and in particular the moving sand deposits along the peninsula that created this difficult access into the harbor, we come to why the North Pier Light was constructed. So even with the construction of the Land Lighthouse and improvements to the harbor, it was still pretty treacherous to enter the harbor in the 1800s and even today. And so the Tower Beacon Light was constructed in 1830. It was a simple open wood octagonal structure. It had a lamp array lights on the top that would help to guide ships into the harbor. In 1856, this was destroyed by a schooner, Pilgrim's Passage, running up and over the pier during a bad storm. So a new square iron structure, which is what we're looking at right here, and what, again, if you were to go all the way to the end of the peninsula, you would be able to see today, that was constructed and put in place. It's been moved a couple of times, to kind of a couple hundred feet out and out again, as the pier has been extended over the years. There was a third order Fresnel lens installed in this, but that is no longer present. And again, this one is still an active aid to navigation. It is operated by the Coast Guard out of Buffalo, actually. So it still is an active aid to navigation, as is the Presque Isle Lighthouse. So now what we are looking at here are images and plans for the Presque Isle Lighthouse. And this is probably the one that everyone listening in today is going to be the most familiar with. So this lighthouse is on the peninsula, it's on the park, kind of about halfway down. And what we're looking at here is actually a Habs drawing, this beautiful sketch rendering. This is a Habs drawing of the basic structure. And what we see here, this line that we're looking at up there, that's actually cutting off the tower. So we see the rest of it over here. And that's a really great and accurate rendering of what was actually constructed. This image on the bottom left, that is an earlier image. That's one of the first designs for the lighthouse. As you can see, there's a little bit more decoration involved. It actually was supposed to be made of stone and not brick. So this would have been a more expensive lighthouse to construct. There was originally only a $10,000 budget for this project. When they went out to get bids, the lowest bid was $15,000 right off the bat. So what they had to do was they had to kind of strip away some of that detail and make the lighthouse a little bit more simple so it could be more affordably constructed. So when the plans for were approved by Congress for the new lighthouse on Presque Isle, chosen as a more fitting location to warn mariners of the peninsula and guide ships into the harbor, not everyone was in agreement that this was for the best. Presque Isle was considered pretty wild then, isolated, undeveloped, with really no roadways, a looming risk of fire, and there was also a constant risk that the peninsula would not be a peninsula and it would become an island, which would happen from time to time. This would make construction extremely difficult. Getting things to there, they had to construct their own roadways, their own pathways to transport all of these materials to the site. So the lighthouse is on the lake side, not on the bay side. So initially they tried to bring their small boats around to the lake side and drop all of the materials off directly at the site. This proved to be very difficult, inefficient. A lot of boats were had capsized, they lost a lot of materials, and subsequently they lost a lot of money. So what they ended up doing was they would row across the bay, they would dock in Misery Bay, and they had actually constructed a what was originally just a plank pathway that would go from just about Misery Bay all the way to the lighthouse, and that today is still an accessible trail. Part of it is, I believe, actually paved, but not all of it is. So you can walk that today if you wanted to on the park. So this is how they had to move materials, and you can imagine how laborious that process is, how expensive that process is. So construction didn't go, shall we say, smoothly. So the lighthouse was eventually finished, and it was well built in the end. The tower is actually 5 courses thick with brick, so it's able to withstand really heavy winds and operate smoothly through all of that. The lighthouse was completed in 1873, and the lantern was installed by May of that year. A 4th order Fresnel lens was installed in the lantern room and had a signature of 2 red flashes and 4 white flashes per a 1-minute 360-degree turn. So because of this unique flashing signature, the light became known as the flashlight. So that's still kind of commonly what it's called today. The lighthouse today features an exterior square brick structure with a circular interior structure in the tower, allowing for timing weights and a cast iron spiral staircase. The tower is 56 feet high with 76 steps to the lantern. The lens was removed in 1963 and a modern automated light was installed in its place. And we'll be able to see a photo of that soon. So now that we've sort of gone through the history of why the lighthouses were on the Great Lakes, and what the history basically was of each lighthouse, I'd like to kind of transition into why these are still such important pieces of architecture and why they are still such important pieces of our history, not only here in Erie, Pennsylvania, but the history of the Great Lakes in general. So when we talk about preservation, a lot of what we discuss is, how do we preserve a living site? And that's truly what these are, right? So we're talking about 2 lighthouses, the Presque Isle Lighthouse and the North Pier Lighthouse, that are still active aids to navigation. So these need to be constantly maintained. They need to be working navigable sites. So this is really kind of an important question in preservation is, what's kind of more important? Is it more important to kind of freeze something in time and put a Fresnel lens in this? And I can actually have a picture here. So is it more important to put the original Fresnel lens up into this lighthouse here? Because that would be a historically accurate representation of what the lighthouse was, as we think of it in its sort of more romantic days? Or is it more important to have it continue to function as it was intended to function? So these are kind of the questions that we grapple with in preservation in general. When we look at how do we think about the importance of preserving something, I personally feel that it is important to preserve the inherent characteristics and the inherent values of a property. So when we think about a lighthouse and what its main value is, its value is that it provides a very specific function. It shines the light, ships can see it, it prevents people from running aground into the peninsula or running, capsizing, things like that, navigating them where they need to go. So when we're talking about preserving these main functions, things have to change naturally. So we look at this large photo here, we see what is now actually up in the lantern room at the Presque Isle Lighthouse. So this is a very modern light. It doesn't need a light keeper. It can stay on all day and all night. It has a backup generator all to itself. It's on its own timer, so it knows when to turn on and turn off. So this kind of makes a lot of the original functions of a lighthouse keeper obsolete. But what it does is it allows for the continuation of the usefulness of these structures. So this is a way in which that we can think about preservation when we think about continuing use, actively kind of working towards preserving these sites and making sure that they are maintaining their function. And lighthouses are great examples of that because they do still serve a purpose. The Coast Guard actually still monitors both the Presque Isle Lighthouse and the North Pier Lighthouse to ensure that they are maintained properly, and that they are maintained as active aids to navigation. So at its base, what we are really working towards first and foremost is preserving this inherent function of these structures and preserving the legacy as well. To the left here, what we're looking at are really fantastic 3D models of a fourth order Fresnel lens. This is what it would have looked like. They're quite stunning. You can see the lamp on the interior. This would have, again, been lit with whale oil, kerosene, and it would have been constantly monitored throughout the night, which would be quite the job for the lighthouse keeper. So they're really kind of a marvel of engineering, which is sort of another interesting thing to think about as we talk about lighthouses and the stories that they can tell and the things that we can learn from them. As lighthouses are really truly marvels of engineering, how tall they were, what their focal point was, how far the light was projected, and again, these absolutely stunning pieces of architecture and pieces of art that were constructed, kept meticulously clean, and then projected light to make sure that it was projected as far as it could be. What is around this in this second piece, those red panels, that is what I was referring to earlier, how it was called the flashlight. So as the light would turn, it would either flash red or it would flash white. So those red panels would have kind of created that change. So these are the kinds of things that we are able to interpret with modern technology. Even though we do not have a Fresnel lens up there, we are still able to bring guests up. They come up to the top of the lighthouse. We talk with them about what it was like for a light keeper. And then we can also discuss the evolution of how the light has kept going, how the light has stayed on for so many years, which has culminated in what they see when they go on at the top of the tower today. So that's kind of a major point in terms of why these sites are so important to preserve, is that they do still have a function. They are still working aids to navigation. Another important thing that we have to think about when we talk about preserving historic sites and lighthouses is, these are historic resources. These are a part of the community. All three lighthouses tell the story of the park. They tell the story of Erie. They tell the story of maritime history here. And they are truly a resource and a tool for which people can understand understand the past, and therefore think about the future. I'm excited about the ways in which we can bring people to these sites. The Presque Isle Lighthouse and the Land Lighthouse are both operated by our organization. They are publicly accessible. That is something that we feel really strongly about. That's part of our mission, is that we want these sites to be publicly accessible as teaching tools, as ways in which we can interpret and understand the history of the lighthouses, and just ways in which we can engage with the community. People come down, they walk on the grounds, they learn something, they enjoy. You can see everyone up on the tower there, and they go up to the tower and they just really kind of enjoy their afternoon at the park or at the Land Lighthouse. So these sites are incredibly important to our history. Preserving them is key. It is our goal always when we preserve something to think about doing it in perpetuity. We don't just think about preserving things for the next 10 years. We think about preserving them forever if we can, so that our children's children's children can have the same experience that we had previously. So we want to preserve them for that. We work with a lot of different organizations to ensure that these lighthouses are cared for meticulously, that we are being good stewards for the lighthouses. We work with DCNR, we work with the Port Authority, we work with the Pennsylvania Historical Museum Commission, we work with the National Park Service. All these organizations come together in a collaborative process to make sure that these sites are cared for, that they're open to the public, and that they're telling a really important story, which is all those things that I was talking about earlier. So I will kind of end and close just a little bit with the fact that we are reopening. The lighthouses were closed all last year due to COVID restraints, but the Presque Isle Lighthouse will be open this year. Opening day is May 27th. We're open daily from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. And the Erie Land Lighthouse, which has not been open to the public previously, will be open this year as well. Our opening day is May 22nd. We'll be open every Saturday and Sunday from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. And every first Tuesday of the month will be a free day for the community, and we'll be open those same hours, 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. So again, we're really excited about being able to share these lighthouses, share the history, think about programming. We're still kind of in the early stages of just getting things open and making sure that we open safely for COVID, that everyone feels comfortable coming back. But we are really excited about kind of diving headfirst into different kinds of programming and inviting everyone up to really enjoy these sites. So thank you.
Thank you, Emily. That was fantastic. We have a lot of questions, so I hope you're ready to answer a few of them. I would like to comment right off the bat that your comments about the treacherous waters of Lake Erie and the Great Lakes as a whole is something that, a lot of we take it for granted. There's big body of water where people go swimming in it, they take their boat out on it. Yeah, they're deadly. They have been deadly waters. Some of the questions we've had come in. Could the people in Canada see the Presque Isle Light?
No, they cannot. I don't believe so, because the light, as it is now, shines, I think, about 16 miles into the lake. And Canada is, I'm going to get this wrong, but I think it's over 20. So I don't believe they would be able to. Could the people in Erie see the lighthouse, or was it all aimed out into the lake? So I guess it would kind of depend on where you are. You could conceivably see it, kind of casting its light in the direction it was supposed to, but it would kind of depend on where in Erie you are. From the Erie Land Lighthouse, if you go up to the tower, you can see the North Pier very clearly. but you can't see the Presque Isle Lighthouse. So it's kind of just all about perception and where you are located.
Okay. Does the Presque Isle Lighthouse flash the same as the original did?
No, it does not. So it does not flash red at all. It only flashes white.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad you asked the question about how they made it red and light. That red and white. That's very interesting.
Yeah.
And the concept of kerosene from whale oil goes right into Western Pennsylvania history with Titusville and the oil and how the oil boom killed the whaling industry, really, which may be a good thing.
Yeah, a lot of people really disliked the use of whale oil. I've read that even when it was first being used, people sort of thought it was a poor use of such a majestic animal. So it was used for a while, but then it definitely petered off in favor of other more accessible oils.
Well, another question. Since you live in the Land Lighthouse cottage, do you climb the stairs each morning?
I do. I was just up there earlier today. Actually, that's where I got these photos, or this photo right here to the right. So that's the interior. That's the spiral staircase. It's quite beautiful. It's absolutely stunning inside there. So
it is.
it's
and
quite
as I said, I need to come and visit you so you can take me on a detailed tour.
Yes.
Which of the 3 lighthouses is your favorite?
Oh, the Land Lighthouse is my favorite. I shouldn't play favorites, but I think it's that staircase, actually. It's just a beautiful staircase. The exterior is this gorgeous Berea sandstone. The interior is a circular brick. There's these massive metal doors. It's just architecturally, and I'm an architecture nerd, so architecturally it's stunning. It's a stunning building. So
that's a gorgeous staircase.
it is.
Are there stories of how the Presque Isle Lighthouse has impacted boat or ship navigation in recent years?
That's a great question. I don't know if there are any specific stories. That's definitely something that I will look into. But of course, it does impact it on a basic level, considering it is still an active age navigation. And even I've only lived in Erie a month, and I've seen some pretty cloudy skies and little turbulent waters already. So I imagine that it's a safe haven for a lot of boaters, knowing that it's there.
I wonder how much the use of GPS and radar on even fishing boats and things like that has probably helped with that. I heard, this is a question, I heard that old masons would mark their bricks as a sort of signature. Have you noticed any mason marks on any of the bricks or stones?
I haven't. That is a very common practice. Masons usually do leave a little calling card, whether it's a different color brick kind of like stuck in there, or an interesting stone that they found, or they'll actually physically make some kind of mark that's their mark. I haven't noticed anything, but you know what? We will make sure that if I find anything, check our Facebook and our Instagram pages. I'll make sure to put that information out there if I do ever find something like that.
Another visitor or viewer asked, will visitors be able to go to the top of both lighthouses?
Yes, they will. Yes, they will. Yeah, so this year we are open. Visitors will be able to climb the tower. We are introducing a limited capacity. So previously we were able to have about 10 people up in the tower at a time. We're only going to do 6 this year to make sure that everyone feels safe and is comfortable. But yes, we will be allowing people to climb the tower. One caveat of that is children who are shorter than 44 inches are not allowed to climb. And that's because when you get up all the way to the top, it does get a little tricky, especially for kids who are younger and a little difficult.
Of course, right. I think if the next question, if they look at your last they will see that there are volunteer opportunities, correct?
Yes, Yes, I don't know if I put that on the slide. I should have. We are always accepting volunteers. We have a fantastic volunteer base. We just finished volunteer orientation. We would love to have more volunteers, of course. So my contact information is on this slide. That's my email and my cell phone number. Those are the best ways to get a hold of me. So please reach out if you're interested in volunteering.
Well, Emily, I want to thank you so much. We have a ton of thank yous coming in for your talk. I mean, it was really a fantastic talk, and I definitely am going to get out and
Yes.
have you take me around. I'm looking forward to it. I want to thank you, as well as Sarah Little, our tech support, and all of you who watched online. Our next talk will be on Wednesday, August 18th, because we are taking the summer off at 7 p.m. when former FBI agent Jerry Clark will present a talk on the now famous pizza bomber case and his role in the investigation Beyond Evil Genius, the rest of the story. Be sure to join us then. Emily, what a fantastic job. Thank you so much for your talk tonight. I want to thank everyone who watched online, and thank you. Good night, everyone.